With the party scene, we really wanted to experiment with the different speeds, so we sped it up, slowed it down. We also included some jump cuts. We just followed the characters around just to show a really lively atmosphere.
In order to sell the eye effect where Brett's on drugs, we had to track the footage in Mocha, which is a plugin in After Effects, and then we applied that data to a null layer. And at the time we wanted the pupil to expand, we put a scale up property just so then it sort of sold the fact that the drugs had taken an effect.
So when Brett was taking the drugs, what we decided to do is we added a high-pitched squeal in the background, we added several echoes to the footage of him falling backwards, and we also slowed down the music.
So one of the biggest challenges for me as the cinematographer and assistant editor was the drug sequence, where it's got to be all kind of dreamy and crazy looking. So we decided to use an overlay which would give that kind of colour effect, as well as adding some warp and different kind of layers that would stagger so that they gave that kind of aesthetic that we were going for.
When Brett's on drugs and he says feminax, we kind of wanted to add an element of comedy there as well. So we used obviously the multicoloured text, we put it into 3D space and used a light there to just give it that bit of extra texture. And I also used a wiggle expression just to make it seem like it was floating in mid-air.
Hey Greymeister, guess who's got a cracking party tonight?
Another big aspect of post-production that took quite a long time to kind of get right is the audio, because there was a lot of different aspects of styles and effects that needed to be added to really kind of sell it. Also things like when he's talking to himself, getting the kind of the pitch shift right so that it actually comes across as this godly sound. And even things just like the Foley sounds of like the bottle being picked up, and we also did a lot of ADR where we were replacing whole sections of audio because on set the audio just wasn't usable.
Well, if it's so great, how about you have some?
As the film is only 10 minutes long, we needed to show quickly that Brett was going through a breakup, so we did this through a text effect. Basically, we tracked the original footage using motion tracker properties, where we tracked the position and rotation properties and applied that data to a null layer using high contrast points. Then we attached the pre-animated After Effects file onto the null layer, so it looked like the text was actually coming out of the object seen on screen.
Every time you walk by.
Hello, Brett.
So more specifically, the sequence where Brett is talking to a large version of like his godly self in the sky, that was really kind of difficult to get right. There was loads of masking and feathering and adding like psychedelic backgrounds to give this like trippy look to it and stuff, and also affecting the audio so it had that kind of godly feel to it.
Remember who you are. Remember who you are.
For this project, I was in charge of writing the music, which coincides with what the actor is doing throughout the movie, and it was a really, really good fun thing to do. I had some instructions from the director, and it was basically divided into 5 different pieces, so I had to coincide with one where he's in love, that had to be quite nostalgic, the other one where he's bored, has to be kind of a boring, jazzy kind of feel to it, so it was quite repetitive. I had just a list of instructions and I kind of went with that, and had a little bit of my own input in it, and I just sent them back to Joe, the director, and he said he liked it. So because I've only kind of I haven't really written jazzy stuff, I haven't really written very sad stuff before. I just kind of write normal, basic kind of things, so it was quite a challenge. My favourite piece was definitely the boredom one, the first one, when he's just repeating what goes on in his life over and over again. It's the first time I've written anything that's kind of jazzy, so that was really fun. We used Audition to alter the music slightly because we recorded it on the piano, on the keyboard I have at home, and it got to a point where it sounded a little bit too electronic. So we used Audition to boost the bass up a little bit, and that did the job well. I think it would have been a lot harder to find something that went exactly with with what's going on in the film. It's obviously, with original music, it's a lot better to feel, it's a lot easier to feel what the actor's feeling, because it's been written specifically for that scene. I think it just enhanced the kind of atmosphere and the feeling and the emotions of the actor, and yeah, that has just helped the understanding of the piece, I guess, for the audience.
Oh, he's a cheater! He went early!
One of the biggest challenges for us in Gear Knobs was the end segment at Liberty Dock. Because of a range of logistical issues, we didn't have that many cameras there to capture what was the integral moment of the finale of the race. We only had 1 or 2 cameras, and the footage from them were incredibly shaky. So making that flow together nicely in the final edit was quite a challenge. We took a kind of range of stabilization techniques to make them flow nicely. So that kind of ranged from a basic warp stabilizer effect to taking them into After Effects and looking at more advanced motion tracking effects, whether that just be attaching track points or looking more at a kind of track camera sort of effect. So the other major challenge at Liberty Dock was the sound. We had 5 sources of audio, 2 from cameras which very much picked up the sound of the camera operators moving to capture the shots, and from the tie mics on the presenters themselves, but those were not working very well, unfortunately, when we got them back to look at them in the edit. So making that whole section flow together nicely in terms of audio so that you notice no change between the different sound sources was quite challenging. We used constant power and effect in Premiere to make them flow together a little, but we still needed to apply a range of noise cancellation effects through Adobe Audition to make it really sound nice. Now the basic one of those was just the noise reduction process, but we also looked quite in detail at the declicker and dehummer process, and used the spectral frequency display to reduce the kind of really frustrating audio noises which were coming into it. In the end, we ended up with quite a clean audio, and you can't tell in the edit that it's going between one source and another.
The boss has gone the wrong way! Damn it!
Well, when we started editing together a phone call that occurred between Billy and Carl and the show, it became very obvious very quickly that it felt incredibly forced and just almost as if we'd made them do it, when actually they just decided to make fun of each other about where they were in the race. So we tried to adjust the audio by overlaying it and adding EQ and high pass, just to kind of make it seem as though Billy was on the phone on the bus with Kyle and vice versa, to give it a more natural feel and to make it seem as what it actually was.
So early on in the edit process, we decided we wanted a map graphic to see where the competitors were at a certain point in the race. However, when I started building together one in a kind of 2D Illustrator, it was clear that I didn't really have the experience to put one together that would look incredibly visually interesting. However, when we stumbled across Google Maps' 3D World feature, we found an entire 3D map of Leeds. That's fantastic, but it's quite visually grey, so we decided that we would motion track elements of Billy's face, Carl's face, Jacob's face to the map so that it would kind of be really visually interesting for the viewer to look at. I hadn't had much experience motion tracking before kind of coming into this project, but since then I've been able to apply it to other areas of this project and kind of into the future into other projects I've worked on.